I should have known the moment he said, "Trust me." That's always the line they use before they ruin you. That's how it started, not with betrayal, not with revenge, but with trust. My name's Lena Carter, and for 3 years, I believed my business partner, Evan Blake, was the best thing that ever happened to me. We ran a marketing agency together, Blaze Digital. I was the creative fire. He was the numbers guy. He made spreadsheets look sexy, and somehow, I made viral campaigns out of thin air. We were unstoppable, the dream team. Clients adored us. Industry magazines called us the power duo. And honestly, I believed it. Evan was charming in that calm corporate way, crisp suits, polished smiles, and a voice that could talk anyone into anything. I used to joke that if he ever ran for office, I'd design his campaign for free. He'd always laugh and say, "Lena, we're building something better than politics. We're building legacy." That word, legacy, used to light me up. Until it started to feel like a warning. Because back then, I didn't realize how much power that word held for him. You see, Evan wasn't just my business partner. He was my best friend. My confidant. When my dad passed, Evan handled the clients while I disappeared for a week. When I broke up with my fiancé, Evan showed up with pizza and silence. Exactly what I needed. So when he said, "Let me handle the finances, you focus on the creative," I didn't even blink. Why would I? Trust was the foundation of everything we'd built. But little things started to feel off. Like the day he changed the office passwords for security reasons. And suddenly, I couldn't access our shared account. Or when a client called me asking why I'd doubled their invoice, except I hadn't. Evan brushed it off, smiling that perfect smile. Probably a mix-up. "I'll handle it." And I let him. Because that's what you do when you believe someone's got your back. But here's the thing about trust. Once you start noticing cracks, you can't unsee them. The late-night emails he wouldn't explain. The way he flinched when I mentioned getting an accountant to review our books. The whisper I overheard from our intern, something about private accounts and keeping her out of it. I told myself I was imagining things. That exhaustion was twisting my mind. But deep down, I felt it. That quiet, suffocating certainty that something, or someone, was about to shatter everything I'd built. And I was right. The first time I caught Evan in a lie, it was so small I almost laughed it off. He told me he'd met with a new client that morning, some eco-startup called Verde Innovations. He even described their logo, this clean green infinity symbol. But later that day, I found their email in our inbox. "Looking forward to meeting you next week, Evan." Next week. Not today. When I showed him the message, he didn't flinch. Just smiled that practiced, easy smile. Must have mixed up my days. "You know how I get when I'm swamped." And I nodded because of course, he was always busy, always juggling 100 things at once. Still that night as I brushed my teeth, that email replayed in my mind like a stuck record. Why lie about something so small? The next few weeks blurred together. Evan started working late, locking his office door, something he'd never done before. I'd stay late too, pretending to be focused on ad copy while watching the light under his door stretch thinner and thinner until it finally went dark. He said he was handling confidential partnerships. I wanted to believe him. But then came the phone calls. Whispered conversations in the hallway. When I'd walk by, he'd lower his voice, or worse, hang up completely. "Client stuff," he said once, when I caught his eyes darting to his screen. Just smoothing over a deal. But his tone wasn't smooth anymore. It was tight. Controlled. And then came the favoritism. Evan started giving my projects, my clients, to a new hire, Hannah. Fresh out of college. Sweet but inexperienced. I'd built those relationships from scratch. When I asked him why, he shrugged. "She's eager. Let's give her a shot." "You've got enough on your plate, Lena." "Enough on my plate." That was his new phrase. Every time I tried to question something, The budget changes, the missing invoices, the unlogged payments. He'd say it. You've got enough on your plate. At night, I'd scroll through our old photos, the conferences, the launch parties, the laughter, trying to remember that version of him. The one who stayed late not to hide things, but to dream with me. But even those memories started to feel tainted, like fingerprints on glass. Once, I walked into the office earlier than usual. His door was open. He didn't hear me at first. He was on the phone, voice low, saying something about keeping her quiet until it's done. When he looked up and saw me, he froze for half a second too long. Then, smile. Always that smile. Morning, Lena. Coffee. My throat went dry. That was the moment I realized, whatever he was hiding, I was part of it. I always thought betrayal would come with fireworks, a screaming match, a dramatic confession, something loud. But when it finally came, it was quiet. So quiet it almost didn't feel real. It started with an email. Late Friday night, the office was empty except for me. I'd stayed behind to polish a pitch deck, trying to ignore the uneasy pit in my stomach that had become my constant companion. My laptop pinged, a notification from the printer downstairs. Someone had left documents in the tray. It was probably nothing. But curiosity, or maybe that whisper of suspicion I'd been ignoring, pushed me to check. And that's when I saw it. A legal agreement, drafted under our company's name, Blaze Digital Holdings, revised ownership structure. My name wasn't at the top anymore. Just Evans. According to the papers, he'd restructured the company 2 months ago. My 50% ownership had been quietly reassigned to him under a temporary transfer of rights clause, one I'd supposedly signed. My signature was there, perfectly forged. For a long moment, I just stared. My name, my identity, wiped from what I'd built. All those nights, all those ideas, gone. My chest tightened. I scrolled through the pages, each word slicing deeper. In exchange for relinquishing all rights to Blaze Digital, Lena Carter receives a confidentiality bonus of $50,000. Confidentiality. Silence. He wasn't just cutting me out. He was paying me off to disappear. I stumbled back, my hands shaking so hard I dropped the papers. The printer tray clattered open, scattering pages across the floor. My knees hit the tile, my breath shallow, the world tilting. Evan had been planning this. Every late night. Every locked door. Every, don't worry about it. It all fit. He hadn't just stolen the company. He'd rewritten my story to erase me completely. When he walked in a few minutes later, casual as ever, holding 2 coffees, his eyes flicked from the papers on the floor to me. Lena, you weren't supposed to see that yet. Yet. My voice cracked. You forged my signature. He sighed, like I was a child throwing a tantrum. It's not personal. You were getting emotional, distracted. I needed to protect the business. Not personal. That phrase splintered something inside me. I don't remember what I said after that. I just remember standing there, surrounded by papers, my dreams, my trust, crumpled on the cold floor. He tried to touch my arm. I stepped back. And for the first time, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just looked at him, really looked, and felt something shift. The grief hardened into clarity. If he wanted my silence, he'd chosen the wrong woman to betray. The night Evan stole everything from me, I drove until the city lights turned to shadows. I don't even remember how long I sat in that parking lot. Headlights flickering against an empty building, the forged contract still trembling in my hands. My mind felt hollow. Like the part of me that dreamed, that believed, had been scraped clean. I'd given that man everything. My trust, my creativity, my name. And in return, he'd rewritten my life to erase me. 4 days, I floated through the motions. I ignored calls, stopped eating, stopped sleeping. My apartment looked like a storm had passed through, dishes stacked, papers scattered, post-its of ideas that now meant nothing. Everywhere I looked, I saw pieces of us. The photos from our first client celebration, his arms slung around me, both of us laughing like we were invincible. The glass award that said, Co-founder of the Year. Co-founder. That word burned now. But grief has a strange way of sharpening itself into something dangerous. The turning point came one morning, a week after I found the papers. I was scrolling through our company's social media page, maybe out of masochism, when I saw a new post. Excited to announce Blaze Digital's rebranding under Soul leadership. Here's to integrity, innovation, and a new era of transparency. Transparency. That word snapped something inside me. The hypocrisy, the smugness, the way he twisted the narrative so perfectly, painting himself as the visionary while silencing me in plain sight. My hand shook, but this time, it wasn't from fear. It was rage. Controlled, focused rage. I remembered something my dad once told me, back when I was still figuring out who I wanted to be. When someone tries to write you out of your own story, Lena, pick up the pen. That voice echoed now, stronger than the doubt. So I picked up the pen. Literally. I opened my old journal, the one I hadn't touched since the early days of Blaze, and started writing. Not ad copy, not campaign notes. Evidence. Dates. Emails. Password changes. Financial inconsistencies. Every subtle red flag I'd brushed aside. Piece by piece, I began to see the pattern. He hadn't just betrayed me, he'd built his empire on deception, and I had the receipts. For the first time in weeks, I felt steady. Solid. Like I'd finally stopped falling. I looked around my apartment, the chaos, the wreckage, and whispered to myself, "You wanted me silent, Evan. But I've never been louder than when I tell the truth." That was my vow. He thought he could erase me with a forged signature. But now, I was going to carve my name into his downfall. And I wouldn't stop until everyone knew who Evan Blake really was. I used to trust my instincts to make ideas go viral. Now I used them to make a man fall. I stopped scavenging memories and started harvesting proof. Old emails, archived invoices, screenshots of password change notifications, the printer logs that placed him at the machine the night the forged document came out, copies of the temporary transfer clause from months earlier. I dug through backup drives I'd hidden in a desk drawer, the receipts tucked into a shoebox, the little paper trail Evan thought he'd erased. I reached out to the one person he underestimated, Hannah, our bright-eyed new hire. She'd been the perfect puppet. Eager, worried, and loyal because Evan told her to be. I didn't accuse her. I offered her something more useful than guilt. The truth. I laid out the timeline, showed her the evidence I'd already compiled, and watched her face shift from nervousness to outrage. She gave me access to chat logs and internal folders Evan thought only he could touch. She became my eyes in the office. Rage is combustible, but it needs a legal match. I quietly contacted a forensic accountant, not to sue recklessly, but to map the money. We traced phantom invoices to shell payees, little transfers that added up to a pattern. With each thread the accountant pulled, more of Evan's tapestry unraveled. I also met with a lawyer who specialized in corporate fraud. She smiled with the kind of calm that makes you feel dangerous in the right way. We don't litigate on emotion. We litigate on evidence. Revenge without story is just noise. I started crafting the timeline I'd later publish. Dates, names, receipts, who benefited, and how. I wrote it plainly. No theatrical flourishes, just facts with teeth. I practiced my voice talking about it until my anger sounded like resolve. Evan loved control. He controlled passwords, PR, the narrative. So I made him think he still did. I fed him small, believable lies, pretend concessions over email, faux moves I should have made but didn't, to watch how he reacted. In one exchange, I let him believe I'd accept the confidentiality bonus. He celebrated privately. His guard lowered. All the while, he grew more brazen. He launched the rebranding campaign, announced new hires, toasted a new era in front of clients. He posted smug LinkedIn updates about steering Blaze to clearer waters. He acted untouchable. Perfect. On a Thursday night, Hannah slipped me a flash drive in a paper cup at a late-night diner. It had his financial spreadsheet, the one that tied the shell companies to his personal accounts. The name of an offshore lawyer. A list of kickbacks disguised as consulting fees. I plugged it into my laptop, heart steady now, hands steady. I uploaded copies to 3 secure locations. My lawyer, a backup cloud, and an anonymous account I'd set up weeks ago. Then I composed an email with one attachment, a single compressed folder labeled, simply, Blaze_documents as final.zip. I didn't send it. Not yet. I closed my eyes, felt the old adrenaline, that same thrill that used to come before a launch. I thought of my dad's advice. Pick up the pen. Then, with a calm I hadn't felt since before the betrayal, I scheduled the send. Tomorrow, everyone would wake up to a different Blaze digital. Tomorrow, his smile would crack. I hit save and watched the little clock tick closer to noon. Noon arrived like a curtain drop. I'd scheduled the send for 12, right between lunch and the afternoon slump, when inboxes fill and people skim. The compressed folder I'd labeled Blaze_documents as final.zip went to 4 places at once. A top investigative reporter I'd cold messaged 2 weeks ago, our biggest client, the regulator that oversees corporate filings, and my lawyer's secure account. Each recipient got the same packet: the forged contract, the shell company trail, the forensic accountant's report, Hannah's chat logs, and a simple note, for transparency and investigation. At 12:02 my phone buzzed. Then another. And another. The reporter sent a single reply. On it. The client called my lawyer and then the board. The regulator opened a case. Within 30 minutes the newsroom I'd tipped called back with a request for comment, and then they published, headline sharp and unforgiving. Evan was in a strategy meeting when his phone lit up. His face changed first in a twitch, like someone had flicked a switch. Then the flurry. Texts, emails, a frantic glance at a laptop. He tried to laugh it off when a junior partner asked, but the laugh sounded like a borrowed sound. He told everyone it was a smear. He ordered an emergency PR statement. He pounded at his keyboard, pulling up files, deleting, denying, a man trying to erase footprints in fresh snow. The reporter's piece hit the feeds like a grenade. The headlines read facts, not accusations. Forged signature, shell payments, confidentiality bonus, regulator probe. Screenshots from the packet accompanied it. Comments flooded in, clients demanding answers, employees forwarding the article, investors calling for an emergency meeting. Evan's smug LinkedIn post about a new era of transparency became its own tombstone, ironic and quoted. He sought refuge in the boardroom, trying to turn it into a stage. He spoke fast, trying to reroute the narrative, leaning on words like misunderstanding and internal audit. But the board had the packet, too. The lawyer I'd retained, calm, clinical, stood and asked 3 simple questions that landed like gavel strikes. Where did these payments go? Who authorized the transfers? Why is Ms. Carter's signature on a document she never signed? He stuttered, shuffled papers, offered platitudes. No one bought them. By late afternoon, the board voted to suspend him pending investigation. The regulator served a notice. One of his biggest clients publicly paused their contract. Hannah, who had kept her head down the whole morning, walked into the room with a printed log and put it on the table like final evidence. In that instant, the room that once pulsed with his confidence felt painfully small. He tried to speak to me one last time in the empty hallway, a whispered plea about misunderstandings, a promise to fix things. His hand reached for mine in a gesture that once felt like home. I didn't take it. He looked up, and for the first time, his practiced smile split into something fragile and raw. Outside, the newsroom lights blinked. Inside, the hum of servers and the chime of incoming emails became a chorus of accountability. He had spent months building a quiet empire on other people's labor and lies. He'd traded my voice for a silence he thought money could buy. Now everyone could hear. I stood where I could see him escorted out, not by fans, but by security. He carried only a small bag. He tried to meet my eyes, but mine were steady, empty of plea. The elevator closed. The lobby swallowed him. There was a hush, the kind that follows an explosion, when debris settles and the world takes inventory of what's left. I closed my laptop and let the silence sit beside me like a verdict. He tried to silence me. I made his secrets public. You said. It's strange how quiet victory can be. No fireworks. No grand finale music. Just quiet. A month after the exposure, the news cycle finally slowed, but the echoes lingered. Blaze Digital was under investigation. Its accounts frozen. The glossy logo Evan once flaunted had been replaced by a banner that simply read, "Under temporary administration." Evan's name was everywhere. Headlines, think pieces, cautionary articles. Visionary CEO faces fraud inquiry. From power duo to legal duel. Some called it a fall from grace. Others called it justice. I didn't call it anything. I just watched. The first time I saw him after that day, he was stepping out of the courthouse. No tailored suit, no camera-ready grin, just a man stripped of armor. The press swarmed him, but for the first time, he had no words. And in that silence I realized. He was living the punishment he'd tried to give me. He'd built his empire on control. Losing it was his reckoning. As for me, I rebuilt. Slower, quieter. I started freelancing again, taking small clients who cared more about honesty than hype. Hannah and I partnered on a few projects, and for the first time in a long while, I worked without fear. There were nights, though, when the past still crept in, when I'd wake up expecting an email from him, or hear his voice echoing that same poisonous calm. It's not personal. But now, I knew better. It was personal, not because he'd stolen my company, but because he'd tried to steal my voice. And taking it back wasn't just revenge. It was rebirth. One morning, I sat in the same office where it all began. Now empty, boxes stacked against the wall, the Blaze logo half peeled from the glass. I whispered to myself, "You did it. Not with venom. Not with pride. Just truth." I looked around and realized something almost poetic. The silence that used to suffocate me now felt like peace. I turned it into something new, a space for my own story. So, I did what I do best. I told it. I shared everything online. The truth, the trail, the warning. Not for fame, not for validation, but for every person who's ever been told to stay quiet while someone else rewrote their story. Because here's what I learned. Silence isn't safety. It's surrender. And when you break it, when you speak, that's when real power begins. Have you ever been betrayed by someone who swore they'd protect you? Tell me in the comments. Your story deserves to be heard too. And if you want to see more stories where truth wins louder than lies, hit subscribe. Because next time, the silence breaks again. Collision.